But
regulators.
assets, we hope, is the one thing, the key thing, which really a utility has to have really, really good management of course, and has to really master. That is really their tools of the trade. Is it not, Adam Lovell?
It is indeed. It is indeed. Asset management is almost, should I say, falling out of our vernacular even. It's coming down to service optimization. They're the type of words that we're using now because the world's moving on. But I've got a small presentation here just to kick off some ideas, if that's coming up.
Let's go straight into that. Let's have Adam's, as your clicker.
Okay.
Adam's presentation. Let me put that microphone just in front of you slightly.
Just lean back a little bit. Yeah. And so the Water Service Association of Australia is a peak industry body for all the water utilities in Australia, and a couple of water utilities in New Zealand. Australia is unique in many respects that some of the biggest utilities in the world actually live in Australia. Water Corporation runs the whole of Western Australia, which is 10 times the size of Texas. That's one utility. South Australia, Northern Territory, Tasmania, same sort of situation. But for the east coast of Australia, the big cities, they're generally run by what they call state-owned corporations. So the structure of water utilities in Australia is generally they're owned by the state government or by local councils, but they're actually under corporations law, so they have independent boards and they're independently regulated as well. So we're looking at these sort of strategic priorities as a water industry going forward. This is not just asset management based. And the first one, and the most important one from our point of view, is being a customer-centric utility. We are here to deliver services to customers. It's not, we're trying to move out of the realm, which I think we're all guilty of in the past, of being a patriarchal, we'll do everything, don't worry about the customers, they're just there to pay for us. This is all about moving into a completely different realm for us. Also capturing the value of water and the role that it provides to livable cities. Australians are quite proud that quite often Melbourne or Sydney or Adelaide figures in the top 10 of the world's most livable cities, something we're very proud of, something we want to keep hold of. And water and its role, urban water services and its role in delivering livable cities is incredibly important. The light on the hill, if you were here for Mike Young's presentation earlier today, we're talking about the National Water Initiative. It's effectively a national plan for water management across the country. It's in two parts. Well, you could read it in two parts. There's an urban water section and an agricultural mining resource type section as well. But it's about making that light on the hill live, giving it 20 to 30 years into the distance. The one big thing that's a difference in Australia, maybe from other countries, is that nearly all of our sewer services are separate to stormwater. And traditionally, stormwater is run through local councils, local government, rather than the utility. And I think that's one thing that we're looking for in the future, is to incorporate stormwater into the urban water cycle in a stewardship sense, not necessarily ownership. One huge issue for us is harnessing the digital economy. The Internet of Things, big data, it's all been spoken about. But what's our strategy around going forward on that? And I think that has big ramifications too about the future worker of a water utility and the future workforce and what it looks like. And lastly, and no less importantly, because this has become hugely important in Australia, is knowing your business inside out. And that's all about benchmarking. And as Andrew said, asset management is the one lever that a water utility must have control over. There are other things out of our control, but you must be on top of your asset management and your systems and your planning and your processes, everything that there is to do with it. So, that went a bit quick. Let's go back again. So we've got a very specific board committee and very high level, general manager level asset management representatives that form a committee, and we run our own business plan around asset management. And you can see there, I'm not going to go through the details around that, but WASA, as an organisation, we develop codes for very specific design of systems, water systems and wastewater systems. What it does, it provides surety for regulators and for the private sector who come in to deliver these services to undertake these capital programs, that they're actually delivering what's expected of them. And so those codes are very specific. Across the board, it's about collaboration. And that's what we provide, because none of our members are in competition with each other. They are able to collaborate, come around the table and share experiences. Went a bit quick again. Here's a quick overview of some of the projects that we've got on the go at the moment. I'll talk a lot about the Asset Management Customer Value Project in a moment, but we're all about developing projects that enables a utility to be the best it possibly can in the asset management space. One couple of things I'll highlight out of that slide is asbestos cement pipes have been a big issue, and very recently asbestos, of course, is pretty ubiquitous in many countries around the world, and up to 40 to 50% of some of our members' pipelines are actually asbestos cement, and the way they're managed is incredibly important. And the other issue of flushable wipes is causing huge problems for our assets, our wastewater assets, and at huge cost to fix them. And a story for another day. So, a couple of projects I just wanted to highlight very quickly. This is the Asset Management Customer Value Project. It's all about a benchmarking program of your asset management processes. And we've got over 50 participants have participated in this project since its inception in 2004. We run it every 4 years. Already for this year, 2016 program, we've got over 55 international water utilities from around the world participating. It's all about measuring the success of your processes. It is not about metrics. It's not about how many leaks you have per 100 kilometres of pipeline and things like that. This is about your processes, how well they're documented, whether they live in policy land, and actually how you act on those processes.
But surely, if I could just ask there, the processes themselves must be very individual from not only country to country, but city to city, from utility to utility. So how do you benchmark those processes? Are they just a rigid framework of criteria, or?
Yeah, it's a rigid. It's based in standard asset management practice. So it is water utility focused, but the questions are so generic in that respect that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It applies, and we've put it up now to be measurable against ISO 55001 as well. So. The aim of this benchmarking program, and particularly around the processes, is to share best practice. So we don't publish a league table here. This is not a beauty list of X utility in London was better than this utility in the US. It's not about that at all. It's about isolating, identifying where you are in your asset management process space and giving you access to the best performing utilities around the country, or around the world. So that's the aim of it. And that's what I say. It's all about international excellence and tailored learning for this program. Why is it different? And I've talked about that it's not metric benchmarking, which certainly has its place, and it's complementary, definitely complementary to metric benchmarking. But there's no point in doing metric benchmarking unless your processes are well set up to support it. So the two must go hand in hand. It's all about training and independent verification. So we have an independent, while your utility actually undertakes the benchmarking itself, it's actually independently verified. So we have consultants that come in and verify those results. It's about focusing and identifying leading practice. And as I said, it aligns very close, well, it aligns completely with ISO 55001. Just to give you an idea, Water Corporation, I talked about that before, runs the whole of Western Australia. Perth is that city down there. It's the world's most isolated city for 2 million people. It has been a participant since 2004. But see, some of the major improvements that it's come about is that it's developed, these processes have been measured with their alliances. So Water Corporation works very closely with the private sector to deliver big programs of work and deliver processes as well. It's all about, it's improved its scheduling and its regional control. It runs 200 different systems, sometimes delivering water for just 30 people, well over 3,000 kilometres from the capital city. And it's all about better decision making for its asset replacement program. So here's just a taster. That's actually a fully developed case study in case anybody was interested. I'm happy to give you some more information about that. That's just a taste of what the benefits are for participating. Just quickly, sorry, I'll go back there. We've developed ISO 55001 guidelines, and really this was all about updating all of our systems to be compliant with ISO 55000. We compared this worldwide. Sorry, very sensitive little button, this one. We compared the ISO 55000 guidelines right across the world. So this is we had a very comprehensive look internationally about the other sort of compliance guidelines that are available, and we've made this completely up to date, we believe. And most importantly, this is just a snap, here we go again, just a little snap from the project report itself. It actually gives you an implementation guideline. Again, it's generic for each utility to actually put in place, but it's quite detailed. But we believe that if you follow this guideline, you're really well placed in the ISO 55000 space. If you need extra information, don't hesitate to visit us on the web or contact us through other means. That's a quick fly through there, Andrew.
All right, to give us a taste and get the discussion going, I'd like to also ask Hervé to give us a perspective from Veolia,
Yes.
Perhaps a regional perspective, but also what is Veolia doing in this field?
Yes, thank you. So regionally and as a worldwide...
Can you have some charts? Let's get those charts up here, if we can, whilst you're speaking. Hervé's charts, please. Regionally and worldwide, sorry.
So I'll just introduce, yes, that I found one quite interesting point is about what data and to align the vocabulary. There was not so much standardization in the past, and then the vocabulary starts to be different. And then if you start to put different items in different pockets, you can't really compare, you can't really draw conclusions. So I would say that regionally and internationally, we are really towards standardization of the vocabulary and the concept, so that at least we start to speak the same language. Otherwise, and that seems very obvious, but I think in the industry, generally speaking, there were so many discrepancies that we really had to put this down and try to make sure we speak similar language. So a few things. I will go quickly through the initial slides because I want to directly jump into case study. If you can go back on the slides. I saw it and then it disappeared.
Let's have Hervé's charts up on the screen, please.
So is the PDF?
You had it just one moment ago.
I think so. Yes,
there
that's
we
it.
go.
Here we are. So I will really go almost straight to the number 3. I've picked up a few references that I will use today. So one of them is the concession of Ajman Sewage in the UAE, where we do the customer service, the sewer network, and the sewage treatment plant, so the whole picture, which is really interesting when you can really grasp the whole from A to Z. Second is PAEW, so this is on the potable water side, where we did a whole modeling of the network, including hydraulic modeling and leak detection. Another example is Riyadh, where there's a co-management contract in Saudi, where we are entering and part of the team to, again, improve efficiency in terms of leaks and in terms of availability of service. Continuity of service is one of the challenge in the region and in Saudi, so this was one of the focus. I've taken a few slides about introduction to 55,000. So yes, before asset management was rather maintenance and it was all about repair, then maintain, and then we move into manage. So I've taken the choice not to speak about maintenance because people tend to associate asset management to maintenance, but the picture is much bigger. So yeah, 55,000, so 3 standards, an overview, then the specification and some guidance. And this is the kind of globality of the asset management, and I would really summarize it with cost, performance, risk. And this is how to balance the things. You do need to control your cost, but not at the expense of the performance or not putting risk on tomorrow. So this is really the paradigm of asset management. And it's all down to prioritizing your decisions. So first about asset evaluation, and when we talk about underground assets, the main challenge is how to assess the conditions of your asset because you don't see it. So I've picked up the Ajman case where we came, it was 8 or 9 years ago in Ajman, and we didn't have so much data about the assets. So the first thing was to see, let us assess the risk that we have in terms of likelihood and consequences of the failure. So risk likelihood, we've added a few parameters to say which type of contractor did it. Is it an area which is exposed to works? What is the soil condition? So we've ranked a whole lot of external parameter as well as internal parameter. And then what are the consequences in terms of operation, environment, safety, etc., etc. And the first thing was, and this is the purple dots, was to assess on all the assets so all the pieces of pipe, basically, for underground, where we were in terms of A, B, C, D. The D area means that there's a high likelihood and the consequences are really bad. So then we say, well, we have to focus on this. And the second step then was to say, this is all based on some kind of evaluation, but let's look at what we have. And then we looked into a second step, which is doing some Cctv evaluation to cross-check on the D area, which is the most likelihood and the most consequences. Let us cross-check that our evaluation has a proper meaning and is effective. So, and one of the examples of the action that we took after this is we found that one of the main factor that was impacting fractures or breakage was the works that we had for other utilities. And therefore, we put in place a system of non-objection certificate. Whenever someone is asking for excavation, now they have to ask permission to the sewer authority, and we are involved in this process. And we'll provide them non-objection certificate, and we can attend. And you see that from the moment we put in place in 2009, especially 2010, you see that the gray line is the number of NOC, and you see that the purple line is the number of breakage. So this was one of the consequences from our evaluation. We saw that one of the main risks was disruption because of other utility or the construction works. So we put this in place, and we see that the result was quite effective. Another aspect of asset management which I wanted to talk is about capital investment plan. Asset management is also looking towards the future and trying to estimate how the future will evolve and how to match it to the best. So again, I stay in Ajman, and the first thing was to try to categorize the type of connection to the sewer network and see, okay, what are the flow fluctuations and what's the flow pattern for A, B, C, D, what's the occupancy rate for the different buildings, and therefore come up with hourly and daily flows in order to make a projection, and this is the graph that you have, up to 2000, we are in Ajman until 2034. So there will be some works, but we need to know when we need to plan those works. While we did that, there's something which is interesting, is that in the utilities, you tend to oversize a little bit your equipment because it's better to have more than not enough. It's not always the case. And here, if I've shown the pump curve of one of the equipment, one of the lifting station, and the pump was a little bit oversized because maybe the pipe work would get clogged, so maybe I need more pressure. But the consequence of that is that this provision was a wise provision, but it was not actual. And then we see that there was not enough back pressure on the pump, so I was going out of the operating range, which was leading a lot of cavitation and a lot of poor efficiency. So this is the point that we had, which was really too far in the curve. So when we did the projection, we say these assumptions are excessive, and we can show A, B, C, D that we have some backup to say that it is excessive assumptions. Let's revisit it, and let's put a smaller pump instead. And we've saved a lot on maintenance because there was no more cavitation, so the pump was much more effectively operated. And if you see the graph, the red graph, this is the kilowatt consumption. We dropped by 25% the kilowatt because the pump was so inefficient at the end of the curve. So it means that the asset management also is to better assess what you need now, what you need in the future. Sometimes it does make sense to have a bigger equipment because you will need it very soon in the future. Here was not the case, and to put a smaller unit, you might think that it is not wise to put a smaller unit, but we knew that this unit was good enough, and we could really take immediate benefit in terms of energy and in terms of maintenance of the equipment.
May I just step in there? Is that a common factor that you're seeing, Adam, as well, in the benchmarking project, that perhaps over-engineering, if you like, is going ahead in priorities, that people prefer to do that rather than looking at the economic case, perhaps, for efficiency?
Yeah, I certainly think that's been the case, but I think what we're looking at now is levels of service, and quite often we over-engineer because the levels of service that we have are really quite stringent. Why should every customer have 15 meters of head? That sometimes blows their taps off. So those sort of things we haven't. They were set in stone 30 or 40 years ago, but we actually haven't gone to reevaluate them. So I think hand in hand with this sort of work, which is really important, and it shows you, very specifically, some of the advantages for having a good hard look at this is actually having a look at the levels of service going forward.
Hervé, back to you.
Yes. So the last slide I had was a kind of wrap up of the conclusions that we had. Is that yes, the data collection systematically is very key, and a proper consistent definition. Otherwise, you can double or triple your things depending on how you allocate your different costs. Store, analyze the GIS, yes, that's one aspect. And then the data has to be used to forecast the future. And really, asset management is so much rich than only maintenance. And that's my main point, and that's why I wanted to insist on the upstream evaluation of the asset and the downstream looking for the future. And then you can do the day-to-day activity properly.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're going to now go into a bit of a question and answer session here, and I'll invite questions, of course, from the floor right away. Do I need an iPad to be able to do that, or are people allowed to just raise their hands? An iPad's coming up here, so if you want to stay anonymous, send us an iPad message, and if you've got any questions right away to either of the gents, please just jump in. Well, let me pick up on what you were just talking about, data. And we could probably say that digitalization is going at different speeds in different industries, and possibly, thank you so much, possibly the water industry is at the low end of the speed when it comes to digitalization. We might be able to say that. But is that not a real struggle when you're looking into asset management, Hervé? Not to have the right amount of data at the right amount of speed to be able to really carefully analyze your assets?
Yeah, that's very critical, and we have to remain humble and to still focus on our core industry. And we've tried in the past to say, let's develop our own software. But when you see how frequently you have to update the things on your telephone, you see, fine, I will have to have a whole army of people updating it. So partnership is key, and I know that we had very successful partnership with IBM, for example, and this is their business, and they can really crush big data because that's not as simple as it looks. So I believe that it's not really the added value of the water industry, but they should really partner with the right industry, with IBM, for example, or other partners to make it possible. And then it opens new doors, and it's really required.
Okay. Let me, so would you agree that
Yes.
That's the start of the journey in the water industry right now, digitalization?
That's the trend, but I don't think that the utility actors are really geared up for that or are really specialized for that. And I think really a partnership is required.
Adam, you're nodding?
Yeah, I agree 100% with the partnership side of things. I mean, there's so many big data projects that have potentially gone pear-shaped in Australia because utilities thought that they could handle it themselves. Yes. And I think that's the big thing, is working with dedicated partners who know what they're doing. I think the other thing in the big data space is, why are we collecting all of this data? I mean, it often comes about, and you know, no disrespect because I'm a scientist, but the industry is full of engineers and scientists, and we love data. We love having that. But do we have our customers in mind when we're actually collecting that data? So I think often that we feel like we're swimming in this ocean of data, but if we had a good hard look at ourselves, do we actually need to collect all of that data? There will be always that regulatory side of things where you have to collect that sort of data, but let's focus on, in the big data space, let's focus on customer value. What are we actually collecting the data for, and are we delivering our customers value?
Hervé, maybe on the same question, do you struggle when you're doing your consultancy, when you're looking at your own assets indeed, to be able to share data? Do your customers willingly give you data for you to be able to analyze things, or is there any barrier there at the moment?
When we talk about benchmark, yes, there is some kind of protection, and some clients are not willing that you will assess what is the performance of Riyadh compared to what you do in New York, because it's a kind of proprietary data. So yes, there is definitely the property of the data which is key, and some things go way beyond what you're doing day to day. Typically, the occupancy rate could give you some commercial prospect for developers or for robbers or whatever. So it means that the data that you're using could be used in so many other aspects that it has to remain the property, let's say, of the asset owner. And I agree that sharing this data is a bit sensitive.
Okay. Let me just ask the audience, please. Who's heard of the Internet of Things? 1, 2, 3, a couple of people. Have you heard it who's heard of it in a business context, in other words, in the water industry? 1, okay, so mixed. So perhaps...
The other Australian in the room.
Yeah, we have an Australian in the room, obviously. Looking good there. But particularly the Internet of Things is perhaps something which is on the horizon. Adam, is that part of your benchmarking criteria? Sharing data, the Internet of Things, the cloud, is that even on the agenda? And most importantly, going to Hervé's point about sensitivity, what about data security, protecting from hackers, making sure that you know your assets are protected as well from attack of all kinds?
Yeah. First of all, no, it's not on our benchmarking because it's such an emerging issue for us. But I think, you know, we've been working, and some of our utilities out there have been working with a crowd that used to be called NICTA. It's now called Data 61, which is a big collaboration sponsored through the government, actually having a look at all of the infrastructure that Australia has, critical infrastructure around transport, water, energy and telecommunications, and also looking at the Internet of Things and how that could apply not just to one particular sector, but the whole sector. So I think the Internet of Things, for me, you know, one of the big advantages that will come about from good implementation will be that term, which you may have heard, is called sweating the assets. It's working the assets that we have even harder, because as been pointed out here, you can find redundancy all over the place. And I think having the Internet of Things properly implemented, that's one of the big advantages that we face. So I think, but you pointed it out before, I think the water industry overall, we're really, I don't know what the term for it is, we're not behind the game, but we've got a lot to pick up on. Yeah. And I think we're often guilty of sort of paralysis by analysis, and we've got to try and move with the times a little bit more, get on our skates, so to speak.
Yeah. You have something to add, Hervé?
Yes, and I would say that the internet is a great tool, definitely, but going digital is key, whether then it is on a hard memory or on the cloud or whatever is a kind of a secondary question. I would like to pick up the case that we have in Shanghai, where we have, let's say, a smart network over there for water system. And what is interesting is that there's all the work orders go directly from the customer service to the main control station, and then directly to the teams on the ground, and they have their tablet and they can register everything, and then it shoots back. So everything is digital. Now, the whole data is stored in the control center, which is a Shanghai municipality property. It should go digital, there's no question about this. And paper has very limited added value. Now that we see how practical the tablets are, you can take pictures, etc. So all this is there's no question. We should go 100% digital. Whether we should go 100% internet, to me, it depends a bit, case by case, how remote you are and how centralized you are. But to me, there's no question about digital. There's no added value about paper for this kind of operation. Throwing a work order directly on a smartphone, making the report directly on the tablet, this is obvious, yes.
Excellent. Okay, are there any comments or questions from the audience? Not so far. So you're covering all the ground of what we wanted to hear about. I'd like to just touch on one thing. I think in Hervé's presentation, it was quite obvious that some economic factors were driving asset management. He talked about cost versus risk.
Yes.
He talked about advantages versus cost, etc. Adam, from your perspective, are these, shall we say, business drivers prevalent in utilities asset management, or is it more about purely protecting the service and protecting the network? So to what extent are private business factors in your clients or your customers?
Huge. No, we've got utilities in Australia, even though they're publicly owned, say SA Water Corporation that runs the whole of South Australia, Adelaide is the capital city, 90 cents of every dollar it spends with the private sector. Sydney Water, 83 cents of every dollar it spends with the private sector, with the Veolias and the Suez and the Trinities of the world, or Mitsubishi, whatever you want to call them. So actually having our asset management systems aligned, looking at things through alliances like they do it with Water Corporation, that they actually transfer, the risk is managed by that alliance partnership, not by Water Corporation singly or not by Veolia or Suez if it's running a system for one of those organisations. It's shared. And so that means that all of your asset management systems and processes need to be aligned. Everybody's reporting along the same direction. So it's absolutely incredibly important. I think the ISO 55000, which we both talked about independently of even meeting before 5 minutes ago, just goes to show if you can implement ISO 55000, that whole series, I think your utilities will go a long way to understanding the cost and risk factors that it needs to properly factor in.
So we have a question which relates a little bit to the business drivers, if you like, and also what you were talking about, Adam, about the customer and the customer service and the value that should be given them. How much more efficiency can be driven into the network with good asset management, in a nutshell, is the question. I think Hervé talked about, in the pump example, 25% less more energy efficiency.
Yes.
So how much can be driven in there? Let's start with Hervé.
Yes.
To you, Adam.
Yeah. So, yes, in this particular pumping station, the energy was not the only driver. There was also the shutdown because of the maintenance. And every time there was a shutdown, then there were some nuisance on the surrounding because we had to use some kind of temporary arrangement to pump the water through. So the number of complaints about smell went down drastically at the same time as we saved electricity. So there are other complaints or drawbacks from the customers, which could be continuity of service, like we are insisting a lot in Riyadh, for example, which could be the pipe blockage, the sewer overflow, whenever there's some wipe or some grease blocking the pipe work. So yes, in terms of sewer, examples are numerous about how you can improve the service by avoiding the smell, avoiding the overflow, or avoiding disconnections.
Okay.
I think, and there's a session this afternoon about energy efficiency as well, which will highlight some of these issues a little bit more. In terms of how much more can be driven, how much more efficiency can be driven into the system, I think we actually need to understand the total OPEX of a water utility, and we've just finished a study where 20 of our members actually handed over their general ledger, 100% of their operational costs had to be put into 90 different categories. And we've just come out with some of those results. And so a bit like the asset management benchmarking program, it's not a beauty list about who's the most efficient, but what it is highlighting to you, who people who have participated, wow, I'm sort of really expensive in the wastewater treatment space compared to this utility down the road. I better go and speak to them. So we've never done that before. In fact, I don't know of any other international study that's gone to that extent. But you've got to be willing to let go. You've got to be willing to sort of hand over and be completely honest about your operational costs. So that will help. I think, in terms of benchmarking for us, we're operating that efficiency benchmarking space, process benchmarking, and activity benchmarking. And the three of them operate in a circular fashion. So I think that's the direction we're heading in.
So if you go from a situation from really not knowing so much about your assets, probably not running them extremely efficiently, probably the lowest scorer on your benchmark, if you like, or Hervé on yours, to the best scorer, what's the percentage difference there in terms of efficiency? Just give us a ballpark number. So in other words, when you are mastering your assets, what kind of efficiency gains are possible in there?
Yeah, that's always a tricky question. If I can pick up a few examples about gains that we had in Ajman. So first of all, there was about 20% overall. It was 25% on the energy of this pumping station, but on the network, we saved almost 20% by putting variable speed drive and managing the water, using the network as a buffer. This was one. Another thing is that as a consequence, we could push the sewer treatment capacity by about 10% because the wastewater plant never liked to have big peaks. So by smoothing the flow in the network, we could save 10% on the capacity of the plant. Now, in terms of customer service and satisfaction, I don't have actual figures, but it has raised really in a very positive way. So I would say that an example.
Factors.
Yeah. So I would say that 20% more better energy efficiency, 10% extra capacity saved by these kind of measures, and I would say a good 20% improvement of customer satisfaction. And this was across maybe 8 years, the last 8 years in Ajman, for example.
Okay.
I'll give you a small little case study in Australia. When Kevin Young first took over as managing director of Sydney Water, and Sydney Water is a big utility servicing 4.5 million customers, vertically integrated. The one thing he was very keen on is he did some activity benchmarking, and he found that his mech and elect services was 40% less efficient than the average benchmark in Australia. And in fact, he didn't give them any space to move. He went straight to the market and he outsourced the whole lot. He said to his civil assets network people, internal staff, you're 20% less efficient than the benchmark in Australia, but I'll give you 2 years to meet that. And they did, so they've still got a job.
So very significant efficiency improvements through good asset management. We have 2 more questions and we have 2 more minutes, so it's perfect. What about the future growth planning for assets as volumes increase? I would say change, because if demand side management is done well in this region, for example, then maybe we see them go down. Today's solutions won't solve tomorrow's problems. So how do you plan for the future? Hervé, let me give that to you.
It's quite an open question, but yes, we're getting geared up for the future, and that's why I wanted to insist about capital planning. And capital planning based on actual data and extrapolation really help us not to oversize, because we could see that oversizing was not beneficial, especially for sewer network. If it's oversized, you'll have very long contact time and a lot of emission of smell, etc. So I would say that yes, accurate capital plan and accurate projection is really key to avoid excessive investment and inefficient investment.
Okay, digitalization will help a lot with that planning, no doubt.
To help these projections, yes.
Good. Anything to add, Adam?
Yeah, well, I think as an industry, back in the big drought, of course, we were dabbling in things like real options analysis, portfolio choice theory, and things like that. But we never actually went to the extent of using it. And I think that could be they could be different options to help us with our capital planning. I think the one big thing that we've noticed since the drought, the millennium drought, is that water use has stayed low, like without any restrictions. It stayed at around 40 to 50 gallons per person per day, and compared to what it was, which was up around the 100 sort of mark. Yeah. So that's been an amazing thing, but coupled with climate change, we can't plan for the future based on the past for us. It's a very, that makes it so much more difficult, and it makes it even more important that politicians stay out of water planning, and they have a nasty habit of getting involved.
We have a very final question, because it will be a quick answer, 20 seconds. Is the UAE a participant in your benchmarking program, please, Adam, and who exactly is participating?
Not yet, but that's why I'm here, to talk to anybody who wants to talk to me about it.
Fabulous. So we've heard today at the International Water Summit, efficiency increases of 20 to 40%.
Yep.
If you are doing good asset management programs, please, a big round of applause for our panelists.